Hey, I am Johnny Paradise. I like to say let's plant paradise everywhere. And I got with me the honor, the privilege. Dr. Clayton Baker is with to talk about the Scamdemic 2.0, the Nuremberg 2.0. They are doing the same. They're doing gain of function viruses in labs, ignoring our natural immunity. And three, they're pushing guinea pig experiments. Unbelievable. This is not most of us. We reject profiteer mode of driving this sort of research. Dr. Clay, how are you feeling today? Thank you for coming in.
Oh, feeling good. Thank you for having me, Johnny. I appreciate it.
Well, Dr. Clay, I love the line you gave about Godzilla to save ourselves from Godzilla. Line, you said it better than me.
Well, yeah, what I've come to say to just give people kind of a real simple concept or conceptual understanding of this gain of function research is essentially what they're doing in the lab is they're creating Godzilla and saying the only way we can save Tokyo is by creating Godzilla. So they take viruses that occur in nature and that have limited applicability or limited likelihood of jumping to humans and causing real problems. And then they deliberately weaponize them in the labs. That's what gain of function really means. It means you're deliberately manipulating either with very sophisticated genetic mechanisms or simpler things like serial passage through different animals to basically make them more transmissible and more virulent, which is absolutely crazy. It's really bioweapons research. It's really just good old fashioned germ warfare, is what it is. But they pretend that it's done in the name of protecting us. There's a disconnect there that once you think about it, it makes no sense whatsoever. But until you really sit down and realize that they're creating the monster in order to create a need to save us from the monster. The other analogy that I use a lot is that it's arsonists running the fire department, so they're creating newer and more horrible ways to create more difficult fires. And then they're saying, well, only our proprietary fire extinguisher is going to work. And guess what the proprietary fire extinguisher is? It's all of these vaccines that they're making. So what we've seen during COVID and what we're seeing again during bird flu is the same playbook. What they start with is a virus. In the case of COVID, it came out of a bat cave that they found the virus in China. It's a coronavirus, which is a single-stranded, very simple RNA virus along the lines of a flu virus, respiratory tract potentially spread. But it was found in bats in a bat cave, and that's where it would remain if you didn't go spelunking and deliberately looking for it. But instead, they go and look for them. They found a whole bunch of them, and then they started passing it back and forth between the bat lady in Wuhan and Ralph Barrick, who owns a gain of function lab or runs a gain of function lab at the University of North Carolina. And the go-betweens were Anthony Fauci and Peter Daszak at EcoHealth Alliance. And so they're constantly manipulating this virus until it becomes transmissible in humans and dangerous in humans to some extent. And then it gets out of the lab and you've got an emergency. Well, guess what the solution to the emergency is? The solution to the emergency is everyone has to lock down and lose their liberties until we create the countermeasure to the bioweapon, which is the vaccine. And so now you fast forward to bird flu, and it's the same playbook all over again. The only difference, Johnny, is that this time they're using animals as the target rather than us and our civil liberties. So rather than locking us down, they're basically artificially making the price of eggs go way up, and they're scaring the hell out of everybody, and they're killing millions of birds. So they found, bird flu is a ubiquitous virus. It's all over the world, and it's just always going to be around like the ordinary influenza A and influenza B viruses. In fact, it's a type of influenza A. It's always going to be there, but it usually doesn't bother humans, and when it does, it's typically pretty mild. But if you start manipulating it in the lab, which they have been doing now for a couple of decades, you can potentially make it become something that's transmissible between humans and dangerous to humans. Now, again, why on earth would any sane person do that? And the answer is no sane person, no decent person would do it unless you were developing a bioweapon, which they're doing all over again. They're doing it because they simultaneously, just as they did with COVID, they patent certain aspects of the virus. Now, how you can patent a life form, I don't know, but it's allowed. And then when and if this breaks out and becomes a widespread problem, they can own the vaccine or they can collect royalties on the vaccine. So instead of locking us down and taking away their civil liberties, what they're doing is they're over testing animals. When they find the animals, they're killing them by the hundreds of thousands. That's what's creating the shortage. The shortage is coming from the mass slaughter of these animals. It's not because the whole flocks are dying of the bird. You may have just one or a few birds test positive, and then they mass slaughter the whole flock. That's where the shortage comes from. And so it's an artificial shortage. It's an artificially created crisis, just as it was with COVID. And the plan is to push vaccines on all of us. That's why Zoetis has got this contract with the outgoing administration, hundreds of $1 million, and that's why Moderna was given a $590 million contract right before Trump was inaugurated.
$1 million. This is just insane money. You know, when I always point to, this is how much big pharma's had to pay in just less $80 billion of the big guy. Wrap your head around just about. Okay, it's a football field filled with $100 bills, pallets high, 8 feet tall. That's $1 billion. It's insane. $80 billion they've had to pay. Tens of billions of dollars a year almost, and they're probably guilty of more than that. They have to pay every year. These are repeat criminals, serial criminals. This is unbelievable.
It's really true. I mean, if you look at the rap sheet on Pfizer, for example, Pfizer's paid billions and billions of dollars in criminal penalties over the years for all kinds of malfeasances, as has Merck, as has all these other longstanding pharmaceutical companies. They are, if they were a family, they would be an organized crime family. You know, they absolutely would be. That's what they are. They're basically organized crime syndicates, and that's a tough thing to say. But how do you amass billions of dollars in criminal penalties over decades, doing what you do and not be a criminal enterprise? I don't know what else you would call it.
It's they're serial criminal. Bioweapon profiteers is my favorite way to describe them. Bioweapon profiteers. Mass murderers, genociders. I mean, is it intentional? This is where we decide if it's genocide or not, or is it just accidental? At some point, it seems malicious because gross incompetence, many times over is what you.
Yeah, it's at very best absolute wanton negligence, and at worst it's absolutely deliberate murder, deliberate malfeasance. And once you've done something numerous times and you know what can happen, it's a distinction without a difference. They're doing this deliberately, knowing that this is what the end point is. The only way they make money is if the thing gets out of the lab. So to assume that it's always gotten out of the lab accidentally is a bit naive. And even if on occasion it did, how many times does that have to happen before you're directly responsible? Furthermore, a lot of these labs are very poorly controlled anyway. As you know, there are all kinds of containment problems at the Wuhan Institute of Virology for years prior to the COVID incident. And just to go to the bird flu example, tremendous problems over the years with the Kawaoka lab, the Yoshihiro Kawaoka lab at the University of Wisconsin. He said at least 4 known, leak situations over the years. On multiple times, people said the lab should be closed down because it's not adequately controlled. Of course, it never has because there's a lot of money passing through. But and then of course, the most recent clade, as they call it, the most recent strain, the current H5N1, most likely leaked out of the Southeast Poultry Research Lab, which is a USDA gain-of-function lab in Athens, Georgia. So, after about the 37th time it becomes irrelevant whether it was quote unquote accidental or intentional. It's pretty much intentional.
It's unbelievable. And with the scale we're talking about here, guys, I mean, we're talking about worse than World War II, the amount of carnage. We're estimating 17 million from the virus or the vaccine. What's the breakdown there? 90-10 one way or the other. People can debate, but it's 17 million in all. And that's a low end estimate, I think. And oh, it's just unbelievable, unbelievable. And what we have still is gaslighting, lying to our faces, just a denigration of like quality scientists testifying to what's happening. And we're seeing just unbelievable, it's brazen what they're doing, the way they're pushing forward their studies that are just clearly biased. You know, for ivermectin, this is what I always go back to. This is a silver bullet for me. The smoking gun is ivermectin, guys. And you look at how malicious this was. 200 plus studies peer reviewed they had, and we've got just ivermectin. It stopped it in its tracks. It was a remedy. It was a cure. It brought people back from the brink, and they suppressed that from us. And you couldn't talk about it on Facebook. Okay, and I tried just sharing peer-reviewed studies in a very even-handed way, and 3 times that year. And they banned me at 30 days the last time I did that.
No, that's truly murderous. And you know, the one for me actually as a practicing doctor has it happened was hydroxychloroquine, which is very much the same situation. But I actually, being an internist, I have multiple patients that are chronically on hydroxychloroquine for rheumatological problems, for psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. And throughout COVID, if I continued to write a prescription for my patients who had rheumatoid arthritis, the pharmacy would just fill it, no questions asked. 90-day supply, just fill it. Because it's a safe medicine. You know, it was over the counter in Canada before COVID. But if you tried to get 5 days for 5 days worth for a COVID patient, they wouldn't fill it. Now, don't tell me it's unsafe if I can get it no questions asked for years on end for a patient with rheumatoid arthritis, but I can't get a 5-day course for somebody with COVID. And that's when I knew the whole thing was, that's when I knew, and that was in fairly early 2020, I knew that the whole situation stunk to high heaven, because you can't, there's no justification for that. There's no legitimate justification for that. It's absolutely deliberate.
Let's talk about the conspirators here. You have them all in a line. You have the publications, right? They were pulling studies that supported like the truth about what was happening. So that's what Kennedy talks about, RICO charges against all of the publishers for this peer-reviewed research. And we're letting the likes of Monsanto and all these criminals poison the well of all of this. You know, there's still, like the Monsanto papers were leaked, okay? And they're ghostwriting the science. They're just lying in this research. And we know that. We were big time in the courtroom for it, and what we see is they're still there in those papers, yet they're retracting papers from our guys who are, you know, listen, we've got natural cures at work: vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, quercetin. And for these chickens, you know, it's similar. It's going to be, you know, give them vinegar, give them sunlight. Joel Salatin's quote in a study, it says if they're eating 2 blades of grass from outside, the bird flu, they're gonna have no problem. So this is these factory birds that are it's the wrong way. It's inhumane anyways, and the meat, it's GMO soya, guys. This is what they're doing to us. You know, these chickens can be out there somewhere beautiful, eating the bugs and the plants like they're used to, and we're eating GMO soya with glyphosate on it their whole lives. Unbelievable. And so, yeah, they're taking these natural ways. That was something I wanted to talk to you about, Dr. Clayton. You know, the answer to all of these problems of them taking all our birds, they're calling 150 million, or, you know, feeding our kitchen scraps to them, having some eggs come in. I know you kept birds there for a bit in your youth.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we had ducks and chickens, and we never had to buy eggs, and it was nice. So I have fond memories of having a little backyard, flock.
What Joel Salatin is speaking about the natural immunity. This is just science. Is that, you know, the survivors? There's always survivors from the bird flu, and those are the good going to prosper. And now the bird flu is nothing. And what are they doing? They're saying, no, we need gene therapy. This is what they always called this technology: is gene therapy. It is scary. They don't know what they're doing. It is mad science. They're doing GMO coding. You know, I'm speaking about science. And if we're people of faith, these GMOs are outside of what's natural, the divine design. And the plants, we see it empirically. It hasn't worked for us. They've done it to spray this poison, which I think is the main culprit killing us, this glyphosate from Likewise, now they're trying to tell us there's this bird flu, and they want to give these mRNA shots to our birds. We have no idea what that's going to do to that flesh. They want our kids to be eating this. And they expect us to let it happen because our food is so unnatural. It's so it's bottom of the barrel they're shooting for, maximizing their profits. There's just no conscience with these corporate criminals.
No, absolutely. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that this is in lockstep with the government agencies, and hopefully this will change with the new administration in a big way. I have hope that it will, but it takes time. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of holdovers from, you know, decades of being captured by big ag, if it's the USDA, or captured by big pharma, if it's in HHS. These folks are still hanging around and they're still up to no good. And so it's really, to my mind, it's you mentioned RICO, it's really a conspiracy situation, because what you have is, if you have a large factory farm and the USDA comes in and says, we're going to test your birds, and they find some using questionable PCR methods, of course. They find birds that test positive. They kill the whole flock. And I don't fault you for it because everyone's using the word, but they use the word cull. And just as a point of clarity, culling is not mass slaughter. Culling is when you have 100 sick birds, you separate the one sick bird from. If you have 100 birds and one of them sick, you separate the sick bird from the others. You probably kill it in a farm situation, but that's culling. Culling is like quarantining the sick. Mass slaughter is like during COVID again. It's quarantining everybody. It's locking everyone down, right? Think about the comparison here. When COVID struck, what did they do? Did they do what the Great Barrington Declaration told them to do, which was to have focused protection of the vulnerable and quarantine the clearly sick and transmissible? No. They did the absolute opposite. They locked healthy people down. And then in many states like mine, they went and took convalescing COVID patients and sent them back into nursing homes where the most vulnerable people were. It was the equivalent of, with animals, a mass slaughter situation. You have one or two sick birds, you just kill them all. Well, then what do? You take our tax dollars and you pay these giant egg growers like Cal-Maine or someone like that, and you pay them market value or perhaps even better for all the chickens that you just killed. You know, Cal-Maine just put out their third quarter profits from 2024, and it was a record year for them. It was a bumper year for the largest egg producer in the country, and they're getting millions of birds slaughtered. How can that be? That's because they're being paid off to do it. Again, very analogous to what the hospitals were paid to do. The hospitals were paid to do the hospital protocols. So it's the same playbook. It's the same stuff over and over and over again. And people have to realize there's slight variations on the theme. I said in my article in Brownstone that they act like a sort of a boring high school football coach. You know, you run a play, and if you get a first down on it, you run the same play. And if you get a first down on it, you run the same play. And that's all they're doing. Maybe they run it off the other side of the line, but they're just doing the same play over and over again. And we're fools not to recognize it and to stop and not to stop it.
It is unbelievable what we're letting them get away with. And it actually, it's unreal. So yeah, well, I'm just thankful for everybody who's speaking the truth to power in this movement, because we are up against some bad guys, and this is just thoroughly rotten. And, you know, but I tell people, this is the hill worth dying on, guys, because we're dying here anyways. You understand that? Like, we're getting taken out right now. Okay? So if we got free speech and we're losing it, I say we use it while we got it, guys. This is unbelievable. And so, yeah, man, Kennedy is in there. The Maha movement, guys. Are we going to overcome? Let's keep praying for our country. We've got a lot of bad guys we're up against, and guys, we got the truth on our side. And this is a silver lining. No matter how bleak, how dark things are, this is always human experience. Is that heroic journey? You know what? We want to rise to the occasion, step up. We want to do something. We want to be heroes in our own story. What life do we want to live? And guys, so. Out here in paradise, guys, let's plant paradise everywhere. We're going to get some chickens. We're going to feed them. It's going to be Easter morning again. Baby chicks everywhere. Get some bunnies if you have to. And guys, our favorite plants and animals everywhere give us everything we need locally where we are in our communities. self-reliance, food purity, sovereignty, real independence, real freedom. And we don't need the bad guys if we got everything. See, they're trying to make us slaves to their system, and they're taking all of this from us. But this is who we are. This is who we've always been. And we just got to remember that. So let's get rural. Let's save the seeds and share them. Let's invite our friends to, guys, what this is. See how beautiful it is? I mean, look, it's not always looking this nice, but you know what? Where else would you rather be? But it's so much healthier for us. All of these petrochemicals, I think none of them are good for us. You know, you talk about the PFOAs, it looks like, guys, we've got to just get rural. Rural is all over, and rural is big, and there's so much of it. Just why? That's where all the toxicity is, and that's where they can control it. Where we've always been. Let's go back. Consider it. So much. Any closing thoughts you have?
No, I agree with what you said. I would just say that all that being true and all that being a good plan over the short to medium term, you still have to be, in my mind, you have to be politically active still. Now, in Britain right now, they just at gunpoint, they slaughtered 5,000 chickens in a family-owned organic egg farm because some of the birds tested positive for bird flu, and this was at gunpoint. Now, Britain's in bad shape right now with Keir Starmer and all these terrible people in charge. We're very fortunate that we're not in that situation any longer. But if you go north of us to Canada, there's believe it or not, an ostrich farm in British Columbia that's in grave danger right now. And these ostriches have been raised, you know, ostriches can live 30, 40 years. They've been kept for years, and they are actually used for research to figure out immune solutions, natural immune solutions for bird flu and other types of illnesses in birds. Well, guess what they want to do? They want to slaughter all 400 birds. So, you know, I don't want to tell people there's no hope, but it's running. And not saying you told people to do this, but don't think you can just run and hide. You have to create a safe situation for yourself, but you still have to fight back. You still have to get a hold of all of your elected officials and say this has to end. I don't want my tax dollars going towards what we're calling a genocide. Stop the genocide. You know, you got to stop it. If you stop killing all the birds, guess what? We won't have a shortage any longer. That's what you got to do. We don't want vaccines in all of our food. We don't want vaccinated chickens. We want chickens that are healthy, as Joel Salatin says, because they're in a healthy environment, not because they've been shot up with a million different chemicals and vaccines. And you really have to tell your elected officials you won't tolerate this. You won't do it. And if you do go to the store, you stay away from those things, and tell the people at the store, tell the store manager, I won't buy anything with GMO in it. If it's GMO, I won't buy it. And you tell them every time you go in there. And, you know, this type of thing does make a difference if enough people do it.
I say no to GMO. Say nay to toxic spray. Just say nay. Isn't this a trip since the beginning? The first sin of man, not saying no to the bad food. And we got to say no with our dollars. Okay, guys, we can't go along with it.
Absolutely. And you got to say it to people in charge, because if they don't think that they're going to be having their posh jobs and so on, and their re-elections and whatnot, then maybe they will rethink things. You know, it's you know, the one good thing about this is that as consumers, if you can band together, you do have the power of the buying power, and it's really important. And it really matters for an individual person to speak out, because I think it's true that they know that when someone takes the trouble to write or speak out, that person represents the thinking of maybe 10 or 100 other people who haven't taken the time to do it. And so you really do have power to be vocal and to be active in advocating for yourself and your family. And I think that if you're on social media, then share these things, get other people to do it. We right now, as you said very wisely, Johnny, we're in a position right now in the United States where we have a relatively good, you know, freedom of speech situation. We need to take full advantage of that while we've got it, because you never know what's going to be like in 4 years, or what it's going to be like who knows when.
Unbelievable, isn't it? It's you couldn't have convinced me a couple of years ago we'd be looking at what we're looking at. It's just too much. But Dr. Clay, I know you're busy, and I just so appreciate you coming on today. And yeah, let's keep speaking the truth to power. This is just enough is enough already. These bad guys, we have to, this is the moment, guys. If we have a moment to pull out of this, it seems like the nosedive we're in as a civilization for like 12 reasons. Okay, so if we're going to get out of this, let's do everything we can, speak the truth. It's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
All right. Until next time, guys, feed the chickens, water the flowers, plant paradise everywhere. Guys, golden sunshine coming out from the universe. It loves us. Let's capture that in our plants, and let's breathe it. And let's make food and tasty medicine, the best meals that we can, and let's enjoy them.